Managing multiple clients or large websites? Automate your SEO with Ali AI. Start your free trial now.
Taylor Swift is a link builder. There were rumors that she would get engaged. Our client said, let's give them a free wedding venue. And then we got them 50 links. That's digital PR.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
Hi, thank you for coming to this talk. Firstly, my name's Kiera. I'm a freelance digital analytics consultant, and I have 10 years experience in the industry, working both agency and also client side. So the title of this talk is called Matomo Analytics, the new kid on the block. As I just said, I have 10 years experience in the industry. The vast majority of that has been taken up by Google Analytics. So my first question is, raise your hand if you've heard of or you use Google Analytics. So nearly the whole room. Second question, have you heard of or used Matomo Analytics? So a fair few as well. So you might be thinking, why is she titled this the new kid on the block? Because you'd be right, it's not a new product. It's been around for quite a few years. So it's actually originated from 2007, when it was actually called Piwik. And if you guys know in the audience, there's also Piwik Pro that's available as an analytics package. But it then evolved in 2018 to be rebranded and made into a separate product called Matomo Analytics. I've titled this talk New Kid on the Block purely because it might not be the new kid on the block, but it is incredibly, right now it's very much in the industry coming up. So for myself, I worked with a big pharma client earlier in the year, and we've been using Matomo in European territories as people are getting more concerned about data privacy and government legislation. So what does Matomo actually mean? It's actually the Japanese word for honesty, and Matomo is actually an open source, built by developers, software product that is very much pushing about data privacy and the rights of individuals. So I like to frame it as the story as biblical as David and Goliath. As we know, Google is a big monster, and we've got the small David here in the form of Matomo, because it's not a major player in terms of the market share, but it is a very impressive product, and it is emerging quite rapidly, again, with the emergence of data privacy and a lot of data privacy advocates as well. So I've taken these stats from January 2024 this year. So we have 14 million websites that do use Google, and then we have 1 million websites that use Matomo. So again, highlighting that David versus Goliath magnitude of difference. However, the tide is turning. As I stated, you've got different laws coming in. We've had GDPR knocking around for a few years. We've got people getting far more concerned about their data and their privacy rights, and people are looking away from Google and looking at alternative products to use. So the rise of privacy advocates. Number one, we have concerns about data ownership. Google Analytics owns all of your data. Matomo does not own your data, and you have it as own ownership of that. That is always a concern with other people looking into that. And then we have fines under data compliance. So if you're actually not data compliant, I think in Europe with GDPR, you can actually get fined 4% of your annual turnover and revenue. So if that's you in-house, that's quite significant. But even if you're working for an agency and you're having a client, that's also quite significant. And then there's also the worries over data governance. This one in particular, we have consent mode. So Google Analytics runs off cookie and consent. Well, what about all those people that are saying no, they don't want to be tracked? I did actually have a client earlier in the year, and when we looked at the consent mode, we actually had 40% opting out. So then you're getting a sample set of data which isn't going to be totally accurate. And then again, with the free version of Google Analytics, there's also sampling going on. So we have these three key areas that are coming up in the last few years, why people are starting to look at alternatives to Google. So now we're going into the lawmaking process of it. Government rules are increasing. So I keep banging on about GDPR, but again, I've had clients that are in Italy, in Germany, and even further afield in Canada also that use Matomo over Google because of concerns with regulations. This does seem to be quite apparent in the insurance sector and also healthcare sector, which are very, they have a lot of compliance and laws to go through. Then we also have the transparent advertising to be practiced under the Digital Services Act. So this is more recent, and this will also impact the use of analytics data, because we know Google Analytics does use that advertising, they use the data to fuel the advertising data that they're looking at. And then we're also seeing an ever-changing landscape when it comes to US state privacy policies. So we have the California Consumer Privacy Act, but we're also looking now at separate states are also pushing their agenda about state privacy policies such as Texas and other states. But it's always changing. You really have to keep on top of that. So I've spoke about this, and I've taken this from a McKinsey study. 71% of customers would actually stop doing business with a company for giving away their sensitive data without permission. The only example I can use right now is if we remember AshleyMadison.com when they lost everyone's data, and that caused an absolute shitstorm. So a lot of customers would not be happy if you're using their data without explicit permission. So that's where Matomo comes into effect. So why should we actually look at Matomo and why should we use it? So like the David and Goliath story, why have I got pictures of pebbles? Well, David got Goliath with 5 pebbles, so I've got 5 points here to reiterate that point. Matomo gives you full data ownership. Google doesn't own it. Google owns your data, but with this, if you implement Matomo on your website, your client's website, you have full data ownership. It adheres to GDPR and CCPA rules, making it data compliant. With CCPA, that is the California Act. Google, it's a bit of a grey area there. And in some of the countries, again, with GDPR, Google is not compliant. And then thirdly, we've got your control. You can control the security, the storage, and data governance. So again, that's going back to consent, to the measures that are made also under there. And then finally, you still get behavioral insights from Matomo Analytics. You have the reports, insights, and API usage. Essentially, when you use Matomo, which we'll go on to further in this, it has as much data as Google Analytics, but it's just a lot easier to use if you're working with people that are very concerned about data privacy. So you might think, well, I've heard of it, but does anyone actually use it? Well, they actually do have some major clients in the world. The United Nations uses it, and we also have SEO sites such as Majestic and Ahrefs that also use Matomo. So how does it actually work? If it's so hot on data privacy, how does it actually work? So rather than relying on cookies and third-party cookies to fuel its data and fuel that behavioral insights, the data is actually collected via a JavaScript tracker. It doesn't use tracking cookies. It does not access your log files on your server. And then the Universal Device Detection Library is then used to detect the browser, operating system, and device. So again, it's not relying on third-party cookies and consent to collect that data about your users on your website. Some data is stored in their first-party cookies and also collected to fuel these insights. So then the next step, how do I actually install it into my environment? We have 3 different options. We have cloud, we have on-premise, and then we also have the content management system. So cloud, as you guys probably know, is a pretty straightforward way to install it onto your website. This is the way I did it. I have a Squarespace website. There isn't a plugin available for Squarespace, but essentially you'll sign up on the website. You'll be sent an email with the JavaScript tracking code, which you can then implement onto each page of your website. And then lo and behold, you're then served up when you go onto the browser of Matomo with your user interface, which will then start collecting data. So it's fairly straightforward, fairly easy to implement just via the cloud. Now, I'm not paid by Matomo, although I should be, I think. This is a little bit more information on pricing, because when I've spoke to people about alternative analytics, let's be honest, they want to know the plus points, but if they have to get in buy-in from their boss or their manager or clients, they need to know pricing. So you can get a free 21-day trial, but if you do want to pay a little bit more, if you want a business, that's £20.40 per month, which is not too bad. And what you get included with that is you will get Matomo taking care of software updates, the free customer support and control of your ownership. You'll also get them delivering the maintenance, security, backups and updates, stuff you don't have to be concerned about. And it can track and host for you, but you still will have that full data ownership. It's very simple. Before this talk, I installed it on my website to use it to obviously power this presentation I'm doing now. And it was very easygoing, very easy to install. The next way is actually on-premise. So if you're self-hosted, so if you were wanting to put it on your own servers, what you can do is you have to find systems such as FileZilla. And what you'll do is you'll then create a MySQL database There are some stipulations with it. You have to make sure that you have the requirements. So there's requirements for like PHP and MySQL as well. So you check that first and see if you're eligible. Then you'll create your MySQL database. Then you'll go on to do your create super user. And then eventually when you go through a few steps, you'll get the tracking code for implementation. You'll then put that on your pages of your website. And then again, you'll serve the same user interface as you would do with the cloud. Now with this on-premise, it is better because it's free. It's free to download, it's free to run, there has no data limits. And again, it has that very much strong ethos about data privacy. It remains under your control. The guidance is also available for installation on different systems. I would say that their training guides, the installation guides are pretty good. And then you can also have further resources available on the maintenance of this also. And they've actually put that 10% of the world's top 10,000 websites do use on-premise for the analytics. That's on their website. Unfortunately, I couldn't get through to them and ask exactly who that was, but that's something that they have pushed. And then finally, content management systems, easiest of the lot. You can get plugins. So if you have a Drupal website or if you have a WordPress website, simple plugin, absolutely easy peasy, plug it in, you'll get tracking code embedded, and then it's served up to you again. This again is very similar to the cloud version. So you can have a free version for a trial, and then if you do want a higher bandwidth, you can pay quite a small fee, I think, for 50,000 hits monthly. So again, it's incredibly easy to install all those types of websites such as WordPress and Drupal. I've put Squarespace there, but it didn't actually have it when I was doing it, but I think it's now up to date. Also, again, full ownership, full control over your data, and it still protects the privacy of your users. So that's the way to install it. And all three ways, again, really reiterating the fact you have that ownership on your data. And going back to that point, if you've got clients in healthcare or insurance or other clients that are just incredibly concerned about data privacy, Matomo is the way to go in that respect, because you're getting a wealth of data, but still with that, retaining that full data ownership. And then on top of that, you want to keep your customers or your consumers happy, and they can have that absolute confidence in you that you are looking after that data and you're not exploiting it, because Google Analytics, to a degree, does exploit the data. So what's it like? You're thinking, well, what's it actually look like? So I've put the pros and cons. So what are the pros? The pro and the con, I've said, is actually the user interface. It's very much in the eye of the beholder. In one respect, this is the user interface. It looks a little bit 1990s. There's quite a lot of information within this dashboard. However, some people might find this appealing, some people might not. Why I've highlighted this for myself is I find it a bit 1990s and a bit bland, but it does have that wealth of data. What you can see along the side, along the left-hand side there, it says dashboard, visitors, behavior, acquisition. You have all these different pockets of data there. You've got e-commerce, goals, funnels. It offers you mostly what Google Analytics offers also. It also offers you this kind of funnel display. This to me actually looks very similar to Adobe Analytics, if anyone's ever used that. So you can build custom funnels on there. This is actually one that was just default and populated. So again, it has those similar things that Google Analytics has, but also that Adobe Analytics has. There we have the simple traffic acquisition report. There's your evolution over time, and it gives you a couple of headline stats there underneath also. So I did highlight again all those different little facets of data that you can have. So we've got e-commerce, goals, and so on. But it also does offer for free A/B testing, heat maps, session recordings. Now usually we have to pay more for this, such as Hotjar and other tools out there, but it does offer this. And actually this is from my Matomo account. I didn't have to pay more to use those things. I'm sure once you start using them and maybe the bandwidth or the data that you're collecting, you might have to pay more of a premium, but out of the box, it is there and available. So as I said, the wealth of data available is incredibly good. It's very flexible in terms of you can set up A/B testing, you can set up the funnels very easily. I found in GA4, setting up some custom reports can be a little bit traumatic. And it does have additional functionality should you wish to install that. So what are the cons? The user interface, personally. If, like me, you end up teaching Google Analytics to organizations and you're trying to educate people to become very confident with data, if you have a user interface such as this, it can sometimes be a bit difficult to get people to buy in and feel confident in this. GA the old way was a lot easier to use, and it was visually a lot more appealing. So this might be slightly difficult to try and sell in to clients. A client of mine earlier in the year, big pharma, she absolutely hated it. She was very vocal about not liking it. So I would say this is also potentially a con. I find it a con for myself, actually. The data export is not up to much. So you'll see this, you think that looks pretty nice, that's all fine. But when you do actually export it, it's coming out like this, which is going to be a nightmare if you're wanting to put this, pre-populate this into maybe data visualizations. If you're wanting to manipulate this data, it's going to require additional steps for that data export. So I've just touched upon user interface, not fantastic when you're trying to upsell it, whether that's to your manager or to your clients. The data export function, it's going to cause a lot more steps along the way when you're trying to put it into data visualizations or manipulate the data. And then finally, I've actually put education. So introducing a new product, whether that's to your wider team and stakeholders, or whether that is to your clients, sometimes it's a little bit difficult when you have to educate them on a new product and you're introducing it. What I would say on this, though, is we all have to deal with GA4, and we're having to do a whole re-education piece with GA4 to ourselves, to our clients, to our stakeholders. So actually you have the same issue here, but I do understand Google is very familiar to a lot of people. They feel quite at ease with it, despite it being a bit more difficult. So Matomo might be a little bit more difficult to get that buy-in and for people to actually be a bit more interested in it. So it will require education and training people. But the world is changing, and data privacy is very much a concern of individual consumers, but it's also coming into effect in laws across the world. As I said, we've got all these laws in US states coming ahead. We've got the California Consumer Privacy Act. We've got GDPR in Europe. As I said, Matomo is being used in Germany and Italy and various different places. So the world is changing, and Matomo might be something that a lot more businesses start to use in the future who are actually concerned and actively interested in data privacy. So I took this from this year. So this is January the 1st, 2024. This is trends. So we've got who actually uses what analytics. So we've got around 50% use Google Analytics, 40% of websites using nothing. And then along here, you have 1.6% using Matomo. So it is incredibly small, that David versus Goliath visualization again. But this has actually increased year on year. So Matomo last year was 1.3% and Google was actually slightly higher. So we are seeing incremental increase over the years with Matomo becoming more widely used and adopted. So is Matomo the future? Will it be the David to the Goliath and take the beast's head off? But who knows? So that's what I'm asking you as the audience. It doesn't necessarily have a conclusion, this. It's one to take, for you guys to take away. Do you think Matomo has a slingshot at challenging Google? And if you can answer that question, feel free to talk to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, or talk to me after this, and that concludes the talk.
Okay, that's right again.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.